Two. And we should be live for the Steelers Depot live stream here on this Monday, March 1st. Good to be back with you guys after a little bit of time off from this. Again, we'll do this every other week throughout the off season, just because there's a little bit less, obviously, to discuss. As always, I'm Alex Kozora. With me, as always, as well, is Dave Bryan. Dave, how you doing?
Doing good. Happy Monday.
And Chad, if you could let me know, make sure that you can hear Dave. I messed with some of my audio settings. I want to make sure I forget to check or uncheck the right button so you guys can hear Dave, or that he doesn't sound like a robot either. So we'll try to avoid those two things. So if Chad can let me know that they heard Dave, that would be appreciated. And before we get to a
Yeah,
couple
let
of
me give a little test there. Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
all right, Mike
A little
says you
bit.
sound.
That's. He says I sound good. All right, so a little bit of sticks for everybody there on a Monday.
Just a real quick thing off the top. Obviously, Dave will talk about this on the podcast tomorrow, which, by the way, will be Tuesdays and Fridays for the foreseeable future because we're just kind of getting into off-season mode. So, just a heads up there to the listeners. J.J. Watt signing with the Cardinals. Of all the teams that were mentioned, I don't know if I ever heard the Cardinals' name being in the mix, and lo and behold, that's where J.J.'s going.
Yeah, interesting. You mean he didn't he won't play for the minimum for the Steelers, right?
Shockingly, he didn't want to play for $1 million.
Boy, the NFLPA would have done backflips if he would have done something like that. I just I understand the fan factor and wanting to see those three boys together. And I mean, why wouldn't you? You know, have all three Watt boys playing for the Steelers in Pittsburgh. But as I wrote way back on right after he was released in early February there, it just, him signing with the Steelers, it just wasn't plausible. I mean,
Hmm.
if it's one thing if they had cap space and really the need, which they don't really, overall when you look at Stephon Tuitt and Cameron Hayward and all like that. I mean, look, it would have been nice, but I think it was more the fandom of the Steelers fans that were powering that thing more than anything. More than anything, I'm glad it's over with now, so we
Hmm.
don't have to we don't have to spend any more internet ink on it, if you will.
Yeah, for real. I like Mark's comment here. JJ Watt isn't coming to the Steelers, but the internet said he would. And the internet's never steered us wrong before. Yeah, so glad that saga is over. And as always, Dave and I are here for the next hour till 8 p.m. Eastern Time, answering any and all of your guys' questions. So be sure to ask them in the chat. If you want your question to be guaranteed to be answered and answered right away, please send us a super chat. And we'll do that. And also like the stream if you guys would be so kind. Would certainly appreciate that. All right, let's get to the questions. First one comes from John Pennington, who says, Dave and Alex, do you guys think the Steelers' veteran days off, especially at the quarterback position, needs to change since Canada might be changing the offensive scheme in some ways? John, I think that's probably to be determined. I still would expect Ben to take his Wednesdays off just because the rest and preserving his arm as he continues to get older probably matters more than anything else Canada's going to do to change the scheme. I don't think there's going to be wholesale changes to the scheme either that would require all hands on deck. So hopefully you'll have maybe some semblance of an offseason program, but hopefully training camp and some preseason games to fine tune any changes Canada makes to the offense.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they altered that Wednesday. Maybe every blue moon.
Hmm.
You might see them. Maybe once or twice a season. Maybe work on a Wednesday, maybe on a long week or something along those lines. But I think a lot of it probably has to do with maintenance for the arm on top of it. And look, I mean, we don't really, how how active I'm sure there's Ben's still doing some coaching, so to speak, as part of that
Hmm.
that Wednesday, not actually running the offense there. I mean, obviously, it's when the team's not playing well or when they're losing or whatnot, or Ben has a bad game, that's going to be the instant analysis. Is, well, if Ben would practice on Wednesday, maybe we would, maybe he wouldn't have those types of games. But with his age and as long as he's done it, regardless of the coordinator there, I'll be surprised if he practices very many Wednesdays in 2021.
I'm with you. And just as a quick aside here, shameless plug, have a new audio podcast called The Terrible Take that you guys see on screen right now. We'll do every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Short 1 to 3 minute video with alternating between Dave and myself, kind of just giving our take of the day. So be sure to check out episode 1 and episode 2 will be out tomorrow. Mark
You
Rouse.
really you hit the ground running today with Najee Harris and that age 23. So it only takes like 2 minutes or so
Mhm.
to listen to it. So I think everybody should give that thing a listen to and chime in what you think about what Alex had to say about Najee Harris and his age.
Yep, short episode, just under 90 seconds today. And so I'd love to get your feedback on that, guys. Anyway, back to the questions here. Mark Ralston
It's going to
says,
take me 90 minutes to put together a 90-second.
and you said you have no idea what you're talking about
I
tomorrow.
have no idea
No
what I'm
clue.
talking about on Tuesday. Thank goodness I drew the short end of the stick and only have to do them on Tuesday and Thursday, and you're taking the other 3 days.
Mark Ralston says, it should be fun. I liked your mock draft today, getting Amari Rogers. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I went up earlier today. My second mock draft, the last one before free agency begins. Mutated Genome says, Alex, are there any Heath Miller like tight ends in this draft that will be available at 24? It's so hard to find, of course, that blocking type, that complete tight end, really anywhere in the draft. I will say, and I've seen some more clips and people discuss it because I haven't studied him so intently, but, Kyle Pitts, he's not Heath Miller type blocker, but he's not a terrible blocker. The dude holds his own considering he's billed as this athletic, move, tight end slot kind of guy. Again, not Heath Miller, but he is a better blocker than I think people give him credit for. I think same with Pat Fryermuth out of Penn State. But again, when you're talking about finding Heath Miller, I mean, those guys in the college system, I mean, just in general, they are, just a unicorn in today's day and age.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten too far past. I obviously did a contextualization on Pitts, several weeks ago, and I've obviously seen quite a bit of fire move to this point here too. An interesting name that I haven't heard talked about a lot that you're going to try to maybe to dive into a little bit of tape here in the next couple of days is Hunter Long out of Boston College. What do you know about Hunter Long out of Boston College, Alex? Because he's, believe it or not, he's number 3
Hmm.
on ESPN's, not that it means much of anything, but on ESPN Insider's ranked pages or ranked players, they have Hunter Long as the third ranked tight end. I think 65th overall on their list.
Yeah,
And
I
that was a
did.
new name for me.
I did the report on Long early in the draft process, and he probably comes from that kind of school of more complete tight end, someone that played in 3-point stance, inline guy, even did, was asked to pass protect and is competent in a lot of those areas, decent hands, but I didn't see any sort of special trait, even as a blocker and definitely not as a receiver. So usually with my tight ends, I want them to have one standout trait, either great blockers or great receivers. With Long, it was kind of jack of all trades, master of none, not someone that I would view as a number 3 tight end in this class.
Not a great overall deep, and really hasn't been for years anyway, right?
Mhm.
Tight end class and all like that. In fact, I think you could probably say that this year's, last year's group of tight ends wasn't certainly wasn't great in my eyes, and this one really shaped up to be probably even worse than that one.
Well, I think there's some talent at the top. I think the depth isn't great, but in terms of blockers, there are also a couple of good blocking tight ends in this class, maybe more than usual. Whether you're talking Luke Farrell from Ohio State, Sean Bayer from Iowa, John Bates from Boise State, who was in my mock draft today. So I think you can find some blocking types, but trying to find that all-around number 1 tight end like Heath is just really difficult to do. And again, Heath maybe wouldn't have fallen to the Steelers if he didn't have that hernia surgery. So when those guys do exist, they typically go pretty early in the draft.
Right.
Mike Adesso says, I enjoyed the new mock today. Alex, thank you, Mike. I'm curious what made your second pick of center Trey Hill. Was he the third rated center on your list, or were Miners and Myers gone already? Mike, when I do these mock drafts for at least the ones like was posted today, I don't use a simulator or anything like that. So I just kind of go off what I feel is realistic. I like Trey Hill. Maybe second round is a touch strong, but I'm not convinced he'll be there at pick 88 in the third round. I think he just fits what the Steelers are looking for, a big dude, a physical guy, finishes his blocks, will create a push in the run game. All things the Steelers need, some of that nastiness, some of that physicality that was clearly lacking along the offensive line last year, especially in the run game, especially in short yardage areas. So maybe that's a touch high. That's a fair point, but I think Hill fits what the Steelers look for. And if you find that guy, you take that guy. Couple more questions here. Paul Brown's mentioning Noah Gray out of Duke, says he's a willing blocker, more effective than Ebron, tends to be a body catcher, but has sure hands. He'd be a great midday 3 guy. Yeah, Gray had, I think, a couple of positive plays at the Senior Bowl, someone that is probably will profile next couple of weeks or so, Paul. So good name there. Let's see. Duck Swagger says, question, Alex and Dave, are there any free agents from other teams that you guys have on your radar that will be cheap besides ex-Steelers? I'll have a list here in the next week or two before the start of the new league year on the 17th, Duck, but I haven't really delved into any of those names quite yet. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, I haven't either. But I mean, look, I mean, you send Kevin Colbert out to the dumpster. The dumpster diving is going to be even more confined this time around. Look, I think the most interesting aspect over the next couple of weeks is seeing what, if any, more centers
Hmm.
hit free agency, get cut here. You could see that market kind of get maybe a little thick, and cause a guy to have to sign for maybe 2 years on the cheap. And that's right up Kevin Colbert's alley. You just had the guy out in Houston, Martin, get cut. It'll be interesting if that's an option. Who is it? Fulton from the Saints is someone that
Easton.
what's that? Oh,
Nick,
Easton.
Nick Easton. Yeah.
Yeah, Easton from the Saints get cut. I think about a week ago today, or
Hmm.
right around in there. He's going to be another one. So what you need to do is keep your fingers crossed that maybe another center or two hit free agency here in the next couple weeks, because obviously the bigger supply there is of that, you're going to hopefully drive the price down a little bit. And look, it's right up Kevin Colbert's mo. And we've talked about BJ Finney as well too, but obviously he's still with the Bengals. There's
Hmm.
no sign that he's going to get cut yet, but Mike Brown does not like to overpay players, period. And you would think at the number that BJ Finney's at right now that I don't know how much longer he's going to survive there. So that's something to watch out for there as well too. Classic Kevin Colbert is to not go into the draft with a super heavy need. At least
Hmm.
having your bases covered. So I would fully expect J.C. Haas, and look, J.C. Haasnauer technically isn't under contract right yet, right? I mean, he's still got to
Hmm.
get. He's going to be exclusive rights tendered and yada yada. But I mean, even if even re-signing him, that's just a one small band-aid there. I fully expect by the time the draft rolls around that this team will have a veteran center of some kind that's not currently obviously under contract on the roster. So will it be a BJ Finney? Will it be a couple of names that Martin or the kid from the Saints or Easton? We'll see. But I would fully expect them to go that route, but it will be cheap. It would either be
Hmm.
a 1 year deal for the minimum, or like a 2 year deal that with a first year cap hit of, I don't know, 1.2 million, right around in there.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. They'll sign a vet and probably pair that with a rookie. In terms of other names, I did write an article a couple of days ago that mentioned Nick Martin of the Texans, also Senio Kelemete, who's a more versatile, much cheaper option than Nick Martin. So those are two names I threw out there, but we'll have a more complete list next couple of days for you guys. Got a super chat here from Ryan Parsonson, a longtime listener from Ipswich, UK. Love the show. I was lucky enough to visit Canton back in 2018. Dave, what was your favorite exhibit during your recent visit? And a very generous super chat at that, Ryan. So thank you very much. And Dave, what was your favorite visit or exhibit at Canton?
Yes.
If you had to
No.
choose.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, walking through the Hall of Bust, and you and I have talked about it, I think on the podcast a little bit and all, but there's just something about it, man. That dark lit up, kind of, was it like a half circle,
Hmm.
if you will. The thing kind of winds around there, and just you grew up seeing these things, and seeing the ceremonies, and obviously, anytime interviews are done from the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and they're standing in that bus room, it leaves quite an impression on you. So obviously, when you walk in there, and obviously they have them by years, and uh, man, you can walk through that thing 20 times probably, and stand and gaze at it. So that was obvious. For me, that was the highlight of that. But man, I think we spent, what did we spend?
I
Three
think
hours,
over
45 minutes.
maybe 4 hours, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
almost 4 hours in that place. And Yeah, we could have spent another 2 hours there
Hmm.
easily, probably, and, it was fun to hear, Alex and David O kinda kibitz about a couple things, and, I'm sure David O got a kick out of hearing Alex and I kibitz, about a few things in there as well too, so, it was just a blast for me, something obviously I'll never forget, something that's been on my bucket list on top of it, and, definitely enjoyed myself, but, the Hall of Bust, Ryan, man, fantastic. I will never forget that.
It's a pretty special room, Dave, and this started my crusade to get Walter Camp in the Hall of Fame. I
All
just can't get
right.
over the fact that he can't get in. But Ryan, again, thank you so much for the super chat. Definitely appreciate it. Back to the questions here. We have one from Benor Johnson says, "Would you rather the Steelers be aggressive and trade up for a quarterback they're in love with for the future after Ben, or would you rather the Steelers draft O-line running back early in the draft?" I don't think there's a wrong decision there, Benor, but I will not be against the Steelers aggressively going up for a quarterback if they think he's the guy. Now, of course, would they be right? Time would only tell, but I'm of the mindset that if you have the opportunity to get someone you believe can be the heir to Ben, you do that because there is no such thing as overpaying for a quarterback if you hit big on whoever that guy is. So if they stand pat, that's fine too. But if they can go up there and get a guy, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, whoever, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that I mean that's definitely the right answer there. I mean, obviously we'll see how much more Ben has. I mean, it looks like he's going to come back for 2021. At the very least, there's already some rumblings about will he play longer than that. But regardless, I mean the writing is definitely on the wall when it comes to Roethlisberger, and I don't care how good a defense that you have in this league, you need a franchise quarterback to help you out, get the rest of the way there. So unless you want, if once the time comes that you have to move on from Ben, you you've got to start going towards trying to find a franchise quarterback. And if you did your homework properly throughout this offseason, and you get in a situation where you are convinced that the guy that you would obviously probably have to trade up to do it, if there is a guy there that you are convinced can be that guy, then how can you criticize a team for going up
Hmm.
and going to get him? Now, odds are that 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 kid's not going to work out. But I mean, if you don't fire a shot, you don't have a chance of eating, right? When it comes to something like that, the only thing you worry about is what is the price to move up? Is there such thing as it being too steep to move up? You win a couple of Super Bowls. I don't think you look
Hmm.
back and regret the price that you paid, right?
Yeah, the
So
Chiefs traded up for Patrick Mahomes. I think they're pretty happy with their investment in that.
sure, sure. What did they have to give up for that? You remember what they moved up? How
So
many spots they moved up for
I
that?
forget. Somebody had pointed it out to me the other day. I think about 10 or 15 spots, and they gave up. I forget what the compensation on that was, but obviously it was well worth it. While you look that
Uh,
up, though, I want to get to a quick question here. We'll circle back to that. Paul Brown says, "When are we going to find out if there's going to be a 17th game? Wouldn't this be something addressed as the new league year begins? We should know soon, but the prevailing wisdom is that there will be 17 games in 2021. Not confirmed yet, but highly suspected."
Looks here, Casey traded the number 27th overall pick, a third round pick, and their 2018 first round selection to the Buffalo Bills to move up to the number 10 spot to select Patrick Mahomes. So that, I mean, that's not that's not a lot, right? Traded their so what two first round selections and
Hmm.
a third round pick to go up to get a guy like Mahomes. You think they regret making that move now?
I would say not. I think they're very happy with that decision.
So I mean, look, it's all about the process, and we'll see. How if they show up at quite a few of these pro days, a couple of these top kids that they might have a shot. The Trey Lances, or I would think, and I think Alex has written about this as well too. I would think Trey Lance and Mac Jones are the two that would potentially be in their wheelhouse, maybe
Hmm.
to go get. And obviously Justin Fields. I don't know how high Justin Fields wind up going, but I mean, obviously if they if you want to put him in that set too, I mean, it would probably be one of those three if they were to go up and get a quarterback in this year's draft. I don't know. Maybe a guy like one of those three falls somehow too.
Hmm.
We're already talking about a slam dunk. At least four of those going in the first, I don't know, 20, 23, 22 picks or whatnot. Maybe one of them falls out of there. Maybe it's one that the Steelers like.
Sure. And although pro days will be a bit more limited this year than 2 years ago and seasons past before that, we can hopefully revisit our Blues Clues of what pro days they go to, because the streak was, for years, I think dating back to Ziggy Hood, was the last player they had taken in the first round that they did not attend his pro day. And so, we'll see Alabama, North Dakota State, even Florida with Kyle Trask. We'll throw that out there as well. Let's see where Tomlin Colbert end up, because the guys they watch in person are typically the guys they're going to draft early come April. Got more questions here and appreciate you guys stopping by. Be sure to ask your questions in the comments below. Let me scroll back up here. Samantha Eckhorn, nice to have you here. Samantha says, "Are we sure the team is looking for a Ben replacement, not trying to develop Mason?" I think they're higher on Mason Rudolph than basically any Steelers fan is today. But the problem is, and I know Dave can elaborate on it, is his contract. He'll be unrestricted free agent after this season. So the question is, if Ben is your starter, plays basically the entire season, Rudolph gets throws 50, 100 passes maybe, how much have you really learned about Rudolph, and what do you do with him contractually after the season ends? That's going to be the tight spot Pittsburgh's in if they really do like Mason Rudolph as much as they publicly say they do.
Yeah, Jeremy Fowler talked about that today on the radio during the interview, and he seems to think that it shouldn't be a foregone conclusion that 2021 will be Mason's last year in Pittsburgh. However, the way I look at this is, you know, if he plays at all, here's the only way I kind of see Mason maybe staying is if he really doesn't play at all and doesn't get a chance to kind of build on the last couple of outings that he's had there. If he doesn't play at all, then maybe you can re-sign him to like a, I don't know. I would think that it wouldn't even be as cheap as what Landry Jones was the last time. It was like a 2-year, 4.4 million or something contract. I think didn't Landry get something like a $600,000 signing bonus
Hmm.
as part of that deal? I mean, it's hard to imagine Mason Rudolph not exploring free agency, or maybe he'll have a good idea what his market value is a couple weeks before then. As well too. But the Steelers are notoriously cheap when it comes to their backup quarterbacks there. So I think best case scenario, and I know a lot of people are rooting against Mason returning in 2022, but the only way I see that kind of happening would be obviously not drafting a quarterback this year. That if they drafted a quarterback, that would severely hurt the chances one would think of Mason returning, and B, Mason hardly playing at all, or if he does play in 2021, he falls flat on his face. And that almost would seal the deal for him there. Now, the only other way I would think is if he barely plays, doesn't get a chance to increase his market value, and then gets to right at the first day of the new league year in 2022, a year from now, and the Steelers give him just a good enough deal that he doesn't go elsewhere, and that essentially happened with Landry Jones. I really thought Landry Jones would have ended up with a different team, prior to re-signing with the Steelers. What year was that? 2000 and I don't know, 17? I forget.
Somewhere around there.
In there. But we'll see. But from where I sit right now, I don't like the odds of Mason being back in 2022 personally.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult spot. Now, the counter argument to that is, let's say that Ben retires after 2021. Mason knows that, and he can come back to Pittsburgh, a system that he knows, a scheme that he knows, and an opportunity that'll be as good as anything he could get on the open market. And so that would be a compelling case for him to return. Financially, how do you judge that? The length and the terms of the deal, I think, are tricky. But in terms of Rudolph wanting to stay in Pittsburgh, I could envision that. That's my take, at least.
We'll see.
Let's see. Mike Adesso says, outside of round one, whose tape really surprised you or made you think, wow, he would be a perfect Steeler? That's a good question, Mike. I'd have to chew on that some. I mean, I think Landon Dickerson has first round tape. He just doesn't have the first round value necessarily because of some of the medical concerns. Could still sneak into the back end of the first round, I think, but he seems like a perfect Steeler to me. His toughness, physicality, leadership, all things the Steelers would love to have in replacing Marquise Pouncey. One guy in my mock draft today that fit well, I thought, was Cameron Bynum, the cornerback from Cal, a kind of pure man cover corner that I think would be a good developmental prospect for a year in 2022 with Joe Hayden probably gone. Could be an option then, but those were the first two names that come to mind when you asked the question.
Boy, Quinn Miners looks every bit
Hmm.
a Steeler, and hasn't doesn't he work some with the Watts or whatnot too? Or
I think,
doesn't
yeah,
he
I think.
have some link to the Watts there? And the thing is, though, he wasn't a true center, was he? At UW Whitewaters, I think he was more guard, and I think he took to center like a fish in water. They said, during the Senior Bowl and all like that. So. That's a guy, man. I mean, he just you watch his the little bit of tape that you can find on him from UW Whitewater, and obviously the Senior Bowl snaps and all like that. And him, oh boy, he was cooking everybody breakfast. I mean,
Hmm.
pancakes all over the place there at some of those practices there. If there's one guy that I've seen so far that I say, oh man, that kid looks like a Steeler, it would be Quinn Miners.
There you go. Daryl says, do you think cornerback is out of the question in round one of the draft? It's hard to put anything out of the question, especially in a draft with so much uncertainty as this one, but I think it is highly unlikely. Daryl, I'll put it that way.
Yeah,
And
I would be surprised too, and hopefully with their track record as well too, they
right.
hopefully they would stay away from cornerback as well too early.
Jared says, do you see Ben signing a new contract this week? Dave, when do you think that extension will finally take place?
For Ben,
Yeah, for Ben.
oh yeah, I mean fairly soon. It'll be I think by Friday we should know the specifics on that.
Okay.
At the very least, probably by the middle of next week. But it's obviously going to happen.
Dave says, think offensive tackle has to happen first two rounds to get a long term starter. Chooks and Banner are free agents next year. We don't even know if they're good. Need an offensive tackle early, in my opinion. I get that, Dave. And hey, heck, Banner's not even under contract yet. And we assume he'll come back to Pittsburgh. I think that's almost a guarantee at this point, but still hasn't happened until it happens. But I'm getting the sense, and again, there's so much uncertainty with this line with Filer and Banner and Villanueva. We have assumptions about those guys, but we don't know those things about whether or not who's going to stay, who's going to go. Gerald Hawkins as well. But my feeling is this team is more comfortable with their tackle situation than maybe I am, maybe you are, Dave, as well, and so they may prioritize center and running back more so than offensive tackle. That's my feel of the situation right now. Call
I
it.
mean,
Go.
they are, obviously it could go multiple different ways
Hmm.
with them, but it just feels like they have uh, a lot more comfort with tackle than probably what most people probably think.
Right. Steel Pastor, nice comment here. Really dig the terrible take. Great job, guys. That's good to hear. I appreciate you listening. Let's see. What top three positions would you like us to hit in the draft? I think those things will be fleshed out better after free agency, and we know exactly who they keep, who they lose. We have ideas right now, but let's just see what happens. A month from now, and then I think we can probably better answer that question. Jaden Dunn says you guys previously mentioned former Steelers making a return to Pittsburgh, although it's more than unlikely. How would you guys feel about Le'Veon returning, and what quality of player is he today? I don't think at this point he's going to transform your 32nd ranked rushing attack. So no, don't have a lot of interest in bringing Le'Veon Bell back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't either, and why would you want that mess back?
Right.
To me it just setting you up for a big kind of distraction, if you will.
Ryan Mully, do you think the 2021-2022 season will be a rebuilding season? No, and I don't think the Steelers would put it into those terms. You have been, you have a chance. This is still a team that certainly can make the playoffs and compete for the AFC North crown. So those teams are never in rebuilding mode. But I think, obviously, as we talked about throughout really all the last season, right after the loss of the Browns, was 2020 was the year to make a serious run. And I think that path And that climb becomes a lot more difficult in this upcoming year because they are going to lose a lot of key pieces to this team. Tyler Moore, who's your favorite running backs in this draft after ETN and Harris? Dave, who you like? And you just did a kind of a study on running backs, explosive plays, and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still obviously going through them. Haven't worked down the list too terribly far. And right now, you'll stay tuned for later on tonight because I'm working through all of the runs of 10 yards or longer by Najee Harris from last season. So there's quite a few of them. I think the thing that sticks out the most when it comes to those kind of uh, uh, those kind of explosive runs, if you will, is the fact that man, he's hardly can they draft the whole Alabama offensive line because quite a few of them, man, he's barely he's barely touched 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, and I think that's one of the things that's going to stick out the most to people when they look at the contextualization of these long runs is the fact that man. Didn't take much for him to get out there in open space on a lot of them. Obviously, Javante. Look, I mean, Travis Etienne out of Clemson. Boy, good contact balance with him, and really the same goes with Javante, North Carolina as well too. I think those are your obviously your top three, top three guys there overall in whatever order that you want. It's still hard to and I've got to get into. I want to see more of Najee creating in situations where he has to create. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I mean, you can look at the big runs, and you'll notice this when you look at this contextualization later on. Is man, I mean, the guy's hardly touched. I mean, where are the runs where per se, and there are probably not a lot of them because of that.
Right.
That Alabama offense was so damn good. That line was so damn good. Where are the instances of him having to create? Now there are some of. Don't get me wrong. All these long runs are not just him running around, running through tractor trailer kind of holes there. But that's just one of the things. Now, that kind of stuff's easier to find, I think, with Travis Etienne and really Javante Williams as well too. And the thing that sticks out really, I think, the most about both those two kids is just once again the contact balance. I mean, you hit those guys 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, and they're still running. They're still moving forward from there. So those are the three I've looked at most right now. I've looked a little bit of the other North Carolina kid who's at Michael Carter,
Hmm.
high explosive play rate, run rate for him. At North, I think he was at the top of the list from what I had there. But overall explosive play rates, especially on the 20-yard runs or longer. Is there anything that we can point to and say, aha, this, does that translate really to NFL of being a good or bad back? Probably not. I don't think there's enough evidence there. But more than anything, I think if you look at the percentage of runs at 10 yards or longer and how those runs came about. I mean, look, it's hard to run for more than 10 yards in the NFL on any given play, right?
Hmm.
So one of the things I'm trying to be more cognizant about when looking at this year's class of running backs is those runs of 10 yards or longer and how they developed. Was it 3 yards and get hit and then get the other 7 yards, or was it run free for 10 yards and that was it? So that's part of the going into my study of the running backs this
Yeah,
year.
looking forward to that for sure. We'll talk about that on the podcast tomorrow, I'm sure, more in depth. Joseph Lamp says everyone knocks taking a running back early, but are fine taking quarterbacks early. Have the recent 20 or so quarterbacks that went in the first round been worth it? Yeah, but I think if you look at the history of the position, it's flip a coin. It's 50-50, maybe even worse, where 60% of these guys bust out or at least don't give you the return on investment you put into them. But that is what makes the draft much more art than science. And I think from a principle standpoint, you have to have a quarterback to win. You don't have to invest in in a running back highly to win. And so I think that's where the argument comes from a value standpoint. It's not that quarterbacks hit more often than running backs, but they're just more critical to your success than obviously running backs are. Daily Fire says, "How much do you expect Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton to get annually in free agency?" I mean, it's tough to determine exact numbers just given the cap uncertainty. I think Hilton can compete for the deal that Kenny Moore signed. What was that, 4 years, 33 million back in 2019, and Cam Sutton's probably going to be in that, I think, $4 to $5 million range. But prices can go up based on who's all in play for those guys.
Maybe the market will play a little bit more in their favor when it comes to Sutton and the amount of time that he's played overall. But maybe they could get a little bit of a deal on him. Cam Sutton didn't even make that NFL.com list, did he?
No,
With
I was surprised by that.
and what was that? The top 101, wasn't it?
Top
Or
101 free agents.
yeah, I was a little bit surprised that that he couldn't even make that cut there. Obviously Mike Hilton, you would think. Uh, like you said, you look at that Kenny Moore deal is something like what was it, $7 to $8 million new money average that he got a couple years ago. Poor Mike Hilton, he's due to get paid, man. He's
Hmm.
been kind of a victim of the system, so to speak, as a going through the undrafted ranks and all that he had to go through, jumping teams, and then obviously the Steelers had him right where they wanted him for a couple seasons with the exclusive tenure, and then the restricted tenure and all like that. So poor guy, he's due to get paid, and I would expect him to. I think it's a huge upset if he doesn't get at least 7 million this year, and if that's the number, it's hard to see the Steelers being able to compete with that kind of number.
Hmm. Blake Literal with a funny comment says, "My wife just said they finally met," referring to Dave and I. She's been paying attention for years now. LOL, poor woman. Yep, finally happened just last week. So glad to chuck that off the list.
Yep, absolutely. Had a good time up there,
Hmm.
and David O joined us up there, and boy,
Yep.
we hats off to David O. Really chauffeuring us around. We had a nice large rental kind of SUV, I guess, if you will, that drove around, and David had some great suggestions about. We went to, I think, the John Hines Museum there in Pittsburgh. We drove down to Heinz Field, drove down to the practice facility on the south side, and kind of got the grand tour, and had some great food. I mean, all the suggestions of where we ate was fantastic as well too. A lot of things I probably shouldn't have ate because of dealing with what I'm dealing with and all. But overall, really enjoyed the food.
I did as well. Yeah, great to have David O alongside us. Steel
Oh, that
Pastors,
that breakfast place. What's the name of the breakfast place out your way?
the
That we
lot in Oakmont. Yeah,
Yeah,
really
the
good
lot.
place.
Absolutely fantastic breakfast there.
Steel Pastor, quarterback Fields at number 24. Really thoughts on Casserly? This is from Charlie Casserly's mock draft that had Justin Fields slipping all the way down to 24. Somebody made the comment, and I made the reference, I think, in a podcast that it felt like Casserly forgot to put Justin Fields in his mock draft and just shoehorned him in after the fact. And so, yeah, barring something unforeseen, I don't see Fields or really any of these top quarterbacks dropping all the way to the Steelers' current pick.
Yeah, you never know though. That's why
True.
that's why you have a draft and all like that. I would be surprised based on what I've seen of him so far. Once again, I think it's obviously uh the top four, and I think Mac Jones obviously is in there, and then you know who's number five.
Hmm.
I Trask. It just doesn't feel like Trask is first round worthy, and I think you would agree with that too. Or if he is first round worthy, it's the end of the first round, and a team trading up maybe at the end of the first round to go get him and all like that. So, but I mean, I think as has been the case for a number of years now, probably four or five quarterbacks off the board by the time the Steelers pick. And if a fifth one falls to them, who is that fifth one? And is it a fifth? Is it one that the Steelers could live with?
Well, your top five are going to be in some order of Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Mac Jones. Like I said, you take the top three, I think, are just gone. You're not going to get them, Lawrence, Wilson, and Fields. That leaves you with the remainder, which is Lance and Mac Jones. And so you have to determine if you're the Steelers, are either of those guys potentially the guy. So those are the players I think fans should focus on the most. And I think, again, I'm not even confident either of those guys will fall to 24. So it probably will require moving up to still get Lance or Jones. Mark Leslie, when was the last time the Steelers were really in rebuilding phase, and how long did it take? That's a good question. I think maybe you're probably a little better suited to answer it than I am. I mean, would it be the early 2000s? Well, not or 2003, 2002, right around there. Would that be considered the rebuilding phase for this team, or would it be earlier than that?
Yeah, well, when did they go to the Super Bowl with with Neil
What,
O'Donnell? Uh,
94, 96? What year was that?
so that Super Bowl, I'm losing. I'm getting old where
But I
I
mean, in
can't.
2000, they went to the title game in 2000, right? And they lost to the Pats, I think.
Right, in
So
what 2004?
no, no. Well, in 2004 too, but also in 2000, didn't they? Am I getting my years wrong there?
Oh, let's see here. Super
Somebody
Bowl
can.
30 was the one with O'Donnell, and that was in 90. That was the 95-96 season.
Okay.
So it kind of felt kind of since then on that they were looking for that next quarterback.
Right. Well, then they went to Cordell Stewart and the up and downs there. But when the ups were there, I mean, they were a competitive team, weren't they? I'm trying to think back to the early, 2000 team. Didn't they have success there? Somebody, I'm sure, is chiming in the comments.
Yeah, I'll have to look.
Okay. But it's been a while, obviously, since in the Ben era, there's been no rebuilding. It's been winning with Ben, and so that's going to be this weird transition phase. This franchise, this fan base is not used to.
You're thinking of 2001, right? When they went
2001,
3 right?
right? Yeah, and
Because
they
in
they lost
2000
to
they
the
went
Pats that
9 and
year.
7 in 2000. That's what was throwing me off there.
But in '01, they went to the title game, right? In 2001, they lost in New
They
England,
lost in the conference championship
right?
to the Patriots that
Right.
year, 24-17.
So even in that era, right before Ben, they were still a strong team. Basically, 2 years out, then I think what '03 and '04 things kind of fell off again. But yeah, I mean, it's been really you could argue that this team hasn't really been truly rebuilding since the '80s. You could really honestly make that case.
Well, they lost the Super Bowl in '95 season. Then they followed that up. They still won, I think, the division next 2 years, but lost, I think, first time in a divisional game, and then lost in the conference championship. So really, from like '98 to through the 2000 season, I
Hmm.
guess, were definitely struggle years for Bill Cowher. They went what 7-9, 6-10, then 9-7. Those 3 years went 13-3 in 2001. Then 2002 went 10-5, and then obviously Cowher's 6-10 season in 2003 is what ultimately gave birth to Ben in 2004, and
Right.
then obviously the rest is kind of history here. But got to have that quarterback. Got to have a good defense.
Let's see. Next question here. I apologize on the pronunciation. Nadalium07 says, "Do you expect the Steelers' Week One number three outside linebacker to be a returning player, a veteran free agent, or a rookie?" I don't think it'll be a returning player. I think it'll be either a vet free agent or more likely a rookie. I think they have to address edge. Depth is important. You saw the value of drafting Highsmith in the third round last year as a rotational guy, and then taking over full time for Bud Dupree right now behind Highsmith and TJ Watt is very little. And so I think you need to draft somebody and probably draft somebody third or fourth round. Let's see. Next question here is from Simon. Do you think Trey Lance is better than Mac Jones, a better fit for Canada's offense than Jones? I still need to watch more Jones. I know I keep saying that I need to dedicate some time to really delve into his tape. I'm very high on Mac Jones. Is he a better fit? In some sense, I think obviously mobility is important for Canada and just for the offense, for in the league by and large. But I do have an article it'll probably go up next Monday that I just started working on last night that says maybe we're overvaluing mobility in Matt Canada's offense. Historically, if you look at some of the quarterbacks he's worked with, they haven't all been these super mobile, highly athletic quarterbacks. So just something to keep in mind. Let's see here. What's the bust rate in first round running backs from Rich? That's a good question. It's probably about 50%. That's kind of feels like the norm for every single position, but I don't have the answer to that. Let's see. Trollface Army says, I think if Mac Jones gets past pick 20, we can get him. That's certainly possible. How does the team feel about Mac Jones? I do not know the answer to that. Here's a question, a little off topic for you. This is from Hunter Higgins. Dave, best maiden album. And then for both, if the Steelers don't take a center in the first, how would you feel about Kentucky's Drake Jackson in the third and fourth? I'll leave the first question to you, Dave, here. Best Iron Maiden album.
Oh man, I mean, so many great ones, right? There is no
You tell
wrong
me.
answer there, but peace of mind, obviously, one that sticks out from when my younger days and all like that. But man, such a great discography that Maiden has had over the years, and I got to see them again not too terribly long after I moved to Vegas a couple years ago. They came through here through Vegas and got to see him again here. I think I've seen them, oh, I don't know, 6 times, maybe 5 or 6 times in total and all. But Peace of Mind obviously is up there as far as favorites of Iron Maiden albums. Up the irons.
And then with Drake Jackson, it's a good question, Hunter. I would think they would want someone that's maybe a bigger, stronger run blocker, but they hired Chris Morgan to be the assistant offensive line coach, and I'm not going to put too much stock into who the assistant offensive line coach is. But Morgan's background is that heavy zone scheme with Mike Shanahan and then Kyle Shanahan. They worked in Atlanta together, so that could be telling if they drafted Drake Jackson with the addition of Chris Morgan. That may be a sign they want to incorporate more inside and especially outside zone that we really haven't seen from this team. So that's kind of a philosophical question that I don't know the answer to right now. My guess is they want someone that's bigger, stronger, more physical player. But if they do want to transition to a more focus on athleticism, then sure, Drake Jackson could be that option. Rob James says, I love Harris, Etienne, and Williams, but Gainwell is really growing on me. Can't believe he was catching back shoulder balls on DBs. His versatility is amazing. Yeah, I've become a big Kenneth Gainwell fan out of Memphis, opted out of 2020, but had a really productive 2019 season. Some people will say the offense is too gimmicky, but you look at the success of guys like Antonio Gibson, Tony Pollard, Daryl Henderson. It can translate to the NFL, and he's someone that I think does fit really well in Canada's offense. A good space player, good receiver, explosive, dynamic, all kind of the trait the Steelers' offense is lacking in the run game right now.
Probably what, fifth round on him?
I think he's higher. I think he's a day two
Really?
pick. I don't know
Hmm.
exactly where we'll go because this running back
Late,
class is
late, late
strong.
third.
I think, heck, if you took him at 55, I wouldn't even hate that, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Maybe I think he probably realistically goes more early third round type of guy, but I think he's a really impressive back. But for Pittsburgh's purposes, I know Kevin Colbert, basically said the guys that didn't play in 2020 for one reason or another are going to be hurt by the process, and Gainwell opted out this past season. So we'll see how much that impacts him. Let's see. Still pass through this Trey Hill have the giddy up to pull and get out in front from the center position. I think he does. I have a clip of that in my scouting report of him. He's not an uber athlete, but I think he's got some burst and snap out of his stance. Vincent says, I believe he's saying, do you think Aaron Jones is a good fit for the Steelers? I think that's what he's trying to say here. I think he's a good fit, sure, but it's a lot of money to throw at Aaron Jones, which is money I'm not going to spend on a running back on the market.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking any of these top, Marlon Mack or any of these top soon to be unrestricted free agent running backs. There's just no way that the Steelers are going to be able to compete in the market for any of those guys. So I really just, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking or writing about that kind of stuff, except when somebody out of the blue suggested the Steelers sign, those guys. Look, this team's still over the cap right now, and any cap room that they get is going to probably go first and foremost to them trying to re-sign one or two of their own
Hmm.
unrestricted free agents, and then outside of that, probably try to patch some of those holes, like maybe a veteran center on the cheap, or something else along there. Maybe another tackle on the cheap, or something like that. That can swing, or something like that. The last thing that this team's going to do is, look, might there be a veteran running back? Nile Davis like that you get
God, there's a name.
yeah, on a minimum contract to bring in just to see what you can get there. Yeah, I would imagine that, but there's not going to be any Aaron Jones coming to Pittsburgh. There's not going to be any Marlon Mack coming to Pittsburgh. I promise you that. Those guys are just too expensive, and they just don't have the cap space to afford it.
So you're talking a Kevin Barlow signing. I'll
Ooh,
up
yeah.
your Nile Davis and see you a Kevin Barlow.
Mm, mm,
Wasn't he
mm.
the first Steeler to be signed and then not make the team in the Colbert era or something like that?
Yeah, in the prime
Right,
signing period, right?
right, right.
Well, actually, didn't Nile join that list
Yeah,
then?
he
Because
joined it right, but Barlow was first.
Right. Barlow, I think, kind of led the list. Led that in that trivia question. I think Nile equal defeat there that year. Boy, that seems like yesterday, but it's been like what, 5 years ago, 6 years ago
With
now.
Davis, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
yeah, Barlow was over a decade ago.
Hmm.
Jason Williams, couple more questions. Be sure to get them in the chat before Dave and I wrap things up. Top of the hour. Jason Williams says breakout year for McFarland, especially with Canada. Obviously, Canada being the OC is good news for McFarland. I don't think it'll be a breakout year because I do believe this team will draft a running back high, but I don't want to give up on McFarland either. I know his rookie year was difficult and tough. He didn't look ready, probably because he wasn't ready, and he was a redshirt sophomore coming out of Maryland, dealt with that ankle injury his sophomore season that limited him even more. And so you talk about a redshirt sophomore, tough transition for any of those guys. No, off-season program, no preseason. Really kind of a tough spot for him. So I know a lot of rookies did well last year for Pittsburgh. Chase Claypool, Kevin Dotson, Alex Highsmith. All those guys though were seniors. So I think you have to be a little bit more patient with a guy like McFarland because he was such a young green guy coming out of Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, break out. He should be able to break out and put up better numbers than he did last season as a rookie. That's for sure. There, boy, would you like to have a couple of these fourth and fifth round picks back now that you've spent on running backs the last 3 or 4 seasons here? I mean, they constantly throwing mud at that running back wall, so to speak, but not much of it has stuck to this point. Obviously, if you go out and if you draft a running back this year, it's going to probably be in the first 2 rounds, you would think, and at the latest third round. And whoever that kid is, you're going to probably try to get, or at least I would hope you try to get him on the field sooner rather than later. And if that's the case, there's not going to be many snaps to go around for a guy like Anthony McFarland and or Benny Snell.
Mm,
Obviously, I think Jalen Samuels is kind of, you know once draft day runs around, barring any injuries, I don't think Jalen Samuels has much of a prayer at making the 53-man roster there. But Anthony McFarland. I mean, if they draft a running back and draft one in the first 2 rounds, it's hard to imagine Anthony McFarland getting a lot of work
mhm.
once the season gets underway.
Right, barring an injury. Good to hear from Russ Obenstein. Says, "What's up, Dave and Alex? Made it late. Live profiles you guys got up on site trying to catch up. Yeah, we're well over 100 at this point in draft profiles. I think we're around 110 and more on the way.
Wow, guys,
So,
guys are doing an incredible
mhm.
job.
Mike Adesso says, I enjoyed this segment last week on what a Nelson extension would look like, but are we completely ruling out a Hayden extension too? Maybe a 2 year? The lack of depth is frightening. I just can't see it with Hayden. I understand wanting to lower the cap, but you extend guys that you want to extend out of principle, not just for cap purposes. He's, what, 31, 32? Do you want to extend that type of corner? I still like Joe Hayden, of course, but he is declining, and I don't want to be stuck with that contract a year or two from now.
The thing is, even if you did extend him, you'd have to do it at somewhat of at least at probably the $11 million
Hmm.
new money average that he makes now. Assuming it's a 2 year deal and kind of similar to the deal that you gave him last time around, what are you going to save cap wise in 2021? And the answer is not much because they've obviously had to restructure him, right? Already through this thing. So it I mean, we'll see how. I just can't see them doing it because A, his age, and B, you just don't stand to free up that much cap space. At least a guy with Nelson, as we talked about on the show the other day, even just a 2 year deal of a new money average of $11 million, you could get yourself in a situation where you're almost carving off about $3 million in cap space in 2021. Now, obviously, if you extend him out 4 years instead of two, you can get in that neighborhood where maybe you're saving around $5 million, and that's a chunk of change to saving cap space, especially when given that Nelson, what is he, 20? What do we say? He's 28, just
Hmm.
turned 28,
Yep.
around in there. I mean that makes sense. So I would expect if any of those cornerbacks are going to get an extension, it'd be Steven Nelson Nelson, and somewhere in the neighborhood of let's say 2.75 to let's say 4.75 million in 2021 cap space cleared. I will be shocked if they extend Hayden. Now the other guy we talked about, and I haven't gotten around to writing him up yet. We'll see what happens with David DeCastro. There's an opportunity maybe to extend him there and maybe clear another say 3 million or so in salary cap space. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But once we get to the start of the new, at the very latest, so start of the regular season, I would expect Steven Nelson to have an extension.
I think so too. Got 130 people here in the chat. Also have a super chat from CJ Sachs. Thank you so much, CJ. He says, I've seen Pitts, talking about Kyle Pitts, mock to Cincinnati. How well do you think Bush can cover him? Man, Pitts is going to be a handful
Ooh.
in the NFL, and in the NFL for sure. Now, I think Bush really improved in his coverage last year, especially in man coverage. I thought he made big strides from year one to year two. Video I did on this channel with Bush's season in review, I think highlighted on some of those improvements. But yeah, I mean, Pitts is going to have what, 6 inches and 30 pounds on him. And that's going to be tough for any linebacker to deal with, especially or also including Devin Bush.
Boy, you go look at I did a contextualization on him right out of the chute, man. That's a wide receiver playing tight end, right there. The guy can make plays over his head too, and that's extremely tough to defend.
Hmm.
Good contested catcher, good up over his head, can get down the middle of the field as well too. So yeah, that NFL is all about matchups, right? And these newfangled tight ends are not new anymore. These hybrid wide receivers. Who's the kid out in with Vegas?
Darren Waller.
Yeah, Waller. I mean, those kind of guys are where it's at. And if you can find one that can block us a little bit, even better. And I've only looked at really Pitts' 2020 tape when it comes to the blocking. I wasn't overly impressed. Supposedly he's got a little bit better tape uh, uh, in there that I haven't seen when it comes to blocking. But I would fully expect him to be off the board. Obviously, by the time the Steelers pick, and here's to him not landing with an
Hmm.
AFC North team, right?
Right. Now they do take Kyle Pitts to be paying to cover, but the Bengals still won't have an offensive line to protect Joe Burrow. So, wouldn't be all bad there. Reginald Rivers says next year's quarterback class looks to you. I've heard it's not as good as this year's class, but guys always surprised. We didn't know about Joe Burrow 2 years ago. We didn't know about Zach Wilson going into this upcoming season, this past season. So, I think you take all that stuff with a grain of salt. Russ
Lord,
says,
Lord, we're supposed to be studying 2022 class already. Oh
I
Lord, I'm
guess
still trying to
catch
make it
up.
through. So I stay behind in draft season for sure, but starting to make it through some of these kids. Yeah, I don't have any comment on 2022 draft quarterback class yet.
Russ Openstein, do you guys think the Finns take Najee Harris before 24? They'd be a prime contender at I think pick 18 is what they have. The Jets 23 are in play as well. Let's hope Aaron Jones signs with the Dolphins. There was a report that Jones and Miami have mutual interests, so that will just be one less team to deal with Najee Harris if the Steelers want to take him.
I mean, we could speculate about this
Hmm.
for hours, right? I mean,
Right.
just don't know what other teams are thinking when it comes to that kind of stuff. You know me, I'm in the running backs are fungible group class, but even so, uh, judging by what the team has said, and Rooney coming out and saying you got to fix this running game, even though I hate the fact that the Steelers could possibly draft a running back in the first round, I think it's very plausible to happen, and I think Najee Harris is obviously a guy you're going to see linked to the Steelers in the first or second round here for all the way up until draft day. Pro Football Focus has him way down in their rankings, more of a second or
Mm.
third round grade on there now. Obviously, grade based on the class and all like that. But there's some people there's a building narrative that Najee Harris might fall out of the first round. I'm not sure if I see that quite yet, but I do think there's a strong, strong chance that he'll be on the board when the Steelers
Okay.
pick at 24 overall.
Yeah, for whatever it's worth, last 3 years, the highest running back has been taken. Pick number 24, where the Steelers are
Right.
at. Timothy Hughes, got more questions here. What's your opinion on Zaven Collins at 24? I think he would be a really good scheme fit, but do you feel like that's your biggest problem with the defense or with a team right now? Probably not. So I won't discount it depending on how the board breaks. He does fit the scheme well, a blitz heavy type defense, but I think they go offense at 24.
Boy, if there was one defensive player, one defensive position, I should say, that the Steelers could go, that at least they could probably get the kid on the field fairly quick. It'd be inside linebacker alongside Devin Bush, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And man, yeah, every bit of tape that you see floating around on Twitter about Zaven right now, man, it just I hate to keep going back to it, but planet theory. I mean, for a guy of his size and was 6'4", whatever,
Hmm.
200 and what do you go
60, 260 listed.
yeah, 260 for a guy that moves the way
Hmm.
he moves like that. Uh, Certainly incredible. You don't see guys really reminds me of the Edmonds kid, the other Edmonds kid, with
Tremaine.
Buffalo,
Yeah.
Tremaine. When you watch him and you kind of think back and compare his tape to a couple years ago there. So if like once again, if this team were to somehow go defense with their first pick, I obviously don't think they will, but if they were, and I mean it would violate a lot of Kevin Colbert rules though, right? Power five.
Yeah, that's a good point. We got to think about those things. But 6'4", 260, I think it's worth violating some of those rules for with the way he
Yeah, you
moves.
you can't teach planet theory, can you?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Steelers lore, those freaky linebackers that could run like a Levon Kirkland type, just this dude that you don't think can move at the size that he moved at. And so, interesting name there. A couple of super chats. Thank you guys so much. $2 from Chad Weiss. Appreciate that, Chad. Always look forward to your insights in the comment section on Steelers Depot with these draft profiles. And Blake Literal says, which player not named Lawrence or Wilson would you love the Steelers to draft? Wife love that you acknowledged her, by the way. Thanks. Thank you, Blake. Dave, player you personally would love to see the Steelers draft.
Oh, I don't know if I'm there yet.
Okay.
Quinn Miners, I can't stop thinking about some of that Senior Bowl tape with Quinn Miners, man. So, uh, I'm not to that point. I usually by the time the draft rolls around, I have two or three guys that I just enthralled with their tape overall. Other than that, I've done it so long. It's just a process to me.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously there's uh, the George. Uh, oh, help me out.
Who's that?
49ers tight end.
Oh, George
Charles
Kittle.
Bl
How do you forget
Yeah,
George
Kittle.
Kittle?
I don't know. I'm just
Ugh.
sitting here looking at a bunch of tight end names, and I couldn't think of Kittle's last name all of a sudden. Every year, there's one or two or three names that I say, oh man, I really really like this
Hmm.
kid's tape. And last year I liked Charlie Warner. Kid out of Georgia, ended up with the 49ers as well too. I really like some of the stuff that he did without the football in his hands. Now, obviously, he ended up still being didn't really do much his rookie season, but I mean, you go back over time. I usually have two or three guys that I say, I really, really enjoyed. Well, Jefferson last year, LSU out,
Hmm.
the wide receiver out of LSU, man, I really, really loved contextualizing him. I obviously knew he probably wasn't going to land with the Steelers, but you look at what he did his rookie season, absolutely fantastic there. But other than Quinn Miners right now, there really hasn't been a guy that I'd say, oh my, I just really really love that kid.
Yeah. For me, I'd give you two names. Blake, I would say Kyle Pitts, a tight end from Florida, who we just talked about a moment ago. Maybe the most athletic tight end to come out since Vernon Davis, perhaps. So just a super freaky
Mm.
guy, can transform an offense. And then Landon Dickerson, provided the medicals are good with him, that'll be the key. But from a tape standpoint, love this guy. I think he embodies everything the Steelers look for from a physical toughness, just leadership standpoint. And he seems to be rehabbing pretty well from that torn ACL.
Didn't he have doesn't he have medical issues before that knee
Oh
as well
yeah,
too?
two torn
Yeah,
ACLs, two ankle surgeries at least, and a partridge in a pear tree. So there's a lot
yeah,
going
that's
on medically.
that's going to be tough for the Steelers to get past.
Hmm. Has there a history of them drafting guys with big medical problems in the first, second round? I'd have to do some research on that. I don't recall.
I mean, not in the last 5 or 6 years at
No,
least, right? I mean, probably had
no.
to go back a lot further than that. You had to probably go back at least 50. Not since Colbert, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. So whatever that's worth, something to investigate this offseason. I want to get a couple more in because we had some good questions here, and thank you guys so much for being here. So we'll go a little bit long since these are every other week right now. Had a comment here from Chris Davis. Who have the Steelers met with or reportedly scouted so far? I want to mention that because, according to Justin Mello, Auburn wide receiver Anthony Schwartz has met virtually or will meet, not sure which one it is, virtually with the Steelers. I know you did a contextualization immediately on Anthony Schwartz, the man they call the Flash. What did you learn about Schwartz?
Yeah, not. I mean, I'm gonna have to go look at some 2019 tape on him because his 2020 tape really didn't impress me overall. For a kid with his and look, the speed I think is there and obvious, but where are the catches down the field? I mean, if you look at his average intended air yards was fine, but what good is average intended air yards 9, 10 yards down the field if you ain't catching those balls? And they obviously weren't all of his fault there, but his average completed catch on the 7 or 8 games I did was what I write 4 yards, less than 4 yards, right around 4 yards mark, right around there. I mean, that's that's Juju route tree last year, I mean, look, they did a lot of things with him in motion and backside X and using them in the slot and moving them around, and you can envision him being used like he was used at Auburn by Matt Canada. But the fact, and here's the thing too: the two of his 3 touchdowns were deep down the field, but they were blown coverages on both of them. One against I think LSU, and one against I think Tennessee was the other one. And those obviously accounted for a big chunk of his average. You talk about passes more than 40 yards down the field. Those obviously play heavy into your average completed yards. There were a lot of completed wide receiver screens, a lot of completed catches behind the line of scrimmage. And really, he did have decent yak overall on his. What did I contextualize? 50 something targets to him, and I think he had like 35 of those were catches or whatnot. I just there's no really combative catches in his 2020 film, so to speak. There's not a lot of downfield to field stuff, catches, so to speak, and really the route running overall not a lot to write home about. So people say, this is a third or fourth round kid. Okay, maybe from an athletic profile he is, but I mean, there's a lot of fast kids that don't play in the NFL, right? I mean,
Hmm.
a lot of athletic ones. So I'll look at it. I'll take a little bit look at his 2019 film when I get a chance. But man, from what I've seen in his 2020 Auburn tape, I view him as kind of a fifth day, as a day three kind of wide receiver with speed, and try to build off of it from there.
Rob James says, I know wide receiver isn't really a need, but if Juju leaves, would you be willing to take Rashad Bateman knowing he could be a Raven if he falls? Gives me Michael Thomas vibes. I'd be open to a receiver. Maybe we should talk about that a bit more, knowing there's at least a decent chance that Juju walks signs elsewhere, but I wouldn't take a player just because Baltimore or any other team may take him. You take a guy because you like a guy because he fits in your offense. He checks all those boxes. So that would be why you would take a player. But yeah, maybe we should at least give a little bit more lip service to the idea of receiver, although Steelers drafting a first round receiver is relatively uncommon for them.
Right, and if Juju does go, I think this team's going to draft him. I mean, they've drafted all but what 2 years since Colbert's
Hmm.
been in Pittsburgh. They've drafted a wide receiver. So if Juju walks, then it's hard to imagine. And James Washington will be entering the final year of his contract. You'd have to think that's probably going to be it for him in 2021. You got to keep the cupboard. You got to keep the pipeline full. So if Juju walks, I fully would expect them to draft another wide receiver, and I don't know, third, fourth, fifth round, right around
Right.
in there.
Yeah, they would 100% draft one. It'd just be a question of where and who would be the ultimate
Hmm.
questions there. I'll say because this person says, don't try to pronounce my name. So I'll oblige. Says, how stupid am I for being slightly interested in Tack McKinley as a possible outside linebacker reclamation project? No, I don't think they're
No,
stupid
thank
for.
you.
What's that? You
No, thank you.
okay? We went in immediately different directions. I wouldn't call you stupid for it. I get that. Would I personally do it? Probably not. I would want to investigate that a little bit more. But I know he's had some off the field stuff and some just hasn't really panned out. But as a bigger pass rush guy, cheap, I at least get where the question's coming from. And let me see if there's any other ones here, just to round things up. Let's see. Mike Adesso says Heath and Troy had medical problems coming into the league. Yeah, Heath had that hernia, but that isn't, a long-term recurring thing the way it is Landon Dickerson. And Troy, what did Troy have coming out? Concussions, maybe? I'm guessing with the way that he played.
Yeah, it seemed like there might have been some rumbling about that, but I mean, even so, I mean, he where'd he go overall? I mean, they went up and got him, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
they traded up for him.
it's not like he fell as far as Heath did.
Right, right. So, if you have to use those two guys as the names, you're going back 15 years, and so that kind of thing proves the point overall. And we'll kind of end the chat the way we started with Desmond Barnes, who had the first comment. Says Dwayne Haskins, and then in all caps, will be Ben's successor. So we'll see. Desmond Barnes is calling his shot on Dwayne Haskins.
He's got to make the 53-man
Yeah.
roster first and foremost here. Look, I mean, obviously it's a no risk move for him, but the only thing that stuck out so far on tape, at least in his pro tape, with for Washington, was he can flick that football pretty good. You know, just a flick of the wrist, and boy, he can put it out there on a rope. He doesn't know where it's going, but he can sling it. Quite honestly, that's the only positive right now concerning Dwayne Haskins that I've seen on the field was he has a live arm. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, he obviously doesn't have a ton of tape. He obviously yada yada went through, couple different systems there at Washington. They claim need some time to work with him and all like that. But look, this isn't kindergarten. These guys got to put their big boy pants on in a hurry, especially if you're a pedigree first round draft pick. They don't have much patience with those guys at quarterbacks overall. We see how quickly the Paxton Lynches, and I mean, you could go down the list, right? Some of
Hmm.
these guys, how quickly these guys flush out of the league, especially at the quarterback position there. So uh, they got to get him on the practice field first and foremost, and I think that's one of the things that Alex has been making sure to drive home ever since they signed Haskins is when is that going to happen? We'll see what happens, what gets collectively bargained with this whole OTA process this year due to the ongoing pandemic. Man, if they don't have any sort of OTA program where they can get these guys on the field, even if they do, how many snaps is a guy like Haskins going to get, especially when you got a new offensive coordinator in Canada and Ben having to get some reps in there? You're not going to learn a lot about this kid or any more about this kid until training camp time. So look, I'm not saying it's impossible, as I like to say, use the term here, but this he's going to have to show a lot in a very
Hmm.
little amount of time. And if the Steelers draft a quarterback this year, that's it for Haskins.
Yeah. Yeah.
Barring an injury, maybe Haskins goes to the practice squad or something like that. But other than that, I'll put it this way: it's a long shot right now that Haskins is your quarterback of the future.
Mark Leslie, I think, says it well. I think we need to wait and see if Haskins is on the roster week one first. So that's a good way to
I mean
frame up.
that's a big that's a big step in the right direction if he can at least make it that
Hmm.
far, in my opinion.
All right, guys, that will end today's live stream. Be sure to catch us 2 weeks from now when Dave and I hop back on here right before the start of free agency. And be sure to check out the Terrible Take again every weekday, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Dave and I giving us your take of the day. And as always, Dave, thanks so much for being on the live stream with me.
My pleasure. How many people we have in here today? 100 and what? 30?
Yeah, topped
140?
out around 130, 140. So appreciate that. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you guys want to be first to be notified of live streams and new videos and other things we do on this channel. Be sure to like this stream as well. Appreciate you guys being here very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Peace and love, everybody. Thank you.